I'm just checking in, hoping maybe someone who works for ASC might watch this or something. But let's talk over a little bit about, well, I can't date anybody because there's a cult of quasi government um, murdering people who I love if I associate basically with somebody else. So they chemically castrated me, deafened me, and gave me Parkinson's. And the reason they gave me Parkinson's was because an agent for the Beatles, Tony Levin, wants to see his name on my treatment upon for levodopa, which is Lev, L-E-V, if his name is on my treatment. And this gives him extreme ejaculation. He's the pussy whipped individual who's always envied my status as a foundational individual in American society. He went to the bank with Reagan saying that um, the use of a fixer and the cooperation of all of the adults in my environment to set up the delusion, which was then circulated by Whisper Campaign, that I had something, that Yoko Ono had something she had that I owed her socially, something abstract that had to do with Lennon's Houdini, but they say he was killed. So somehow they pin this tale on me as their donkey, and they circulate this whisper campaign that it's analogous to the fact that a bunch of sophomores girls didn't like my letter to one of the girls in their society. Well, the thing was they weren't sure they didn't like it. They wanted to try me out. So they did it themselves with me and then rejected me to watch me cry and said, well, it was interesting. I'm not sure I didn't like it. So there was sort of some turbulence. Well, I'm not sure they didn't like it. So let's bring in some other ideas. And Donald Trump says, how's this? How about if I pay you to do it with him and then pay you some more to say you didn't like it? So they finally found the technique that worked. They got someone to really get into it with me, really enjoy it, and then paid her to say she didn't like it. And then they all said, oh, okay, well, she didn't like it, so where were we? Well, we get to torture him. So some sophomore girls don't know whether they like it. You don't have any rights. And so they have to try it out. And they disguise themselves and their intentions and then talk it over and decide that they're not sure they didn't like it. So Tony Levin has to escalate police authority somehow. So he gets somebody to pay them to say they didn't like it. And this allows him to work out what the fixer had all written. And it was clearly a fixer. Yoko Ono had it in for my father. He was a naval veteran from World War II, and she wanted revenge on Little Boy because that's what they called the bomb. And Lenin said, I'll fix it for you. We'll make it look like he was dilettante in the realm of lyrics, British Control Tower lyrics. He's just a poet. Oh my goodness. And they dramatized what they were planning in Pink Floyd's The Wall and so forth. And they had hired some Israeli agents to keep me on ice as a guinea pig for a while they, gestated some things that they were doing alongside of this, like the surprise, surprise, surprise of Parkinson's after surviving COVID-19, for which they poisoned me in the mouth in advance and so on and so forth. I mean, all of this is an old story from the Beatles. It was a fixer. Moon Unit Zappa came in and said the gig is a fixer, and but not to expose it, but to make it their enterprise. They pretended, they doubled back on what they had planted on me as a child. See, they'll do this to a child. They'll definitely traumatize a child and use him, and the fixer will use him for sex. And then some of the girls were evidently a little more honest than them and the others. And they said, well, we tried it out and it was fun. And it was, of course, interesting the way he cried when we rejected him. We're going to have to try another round of it to figure out whether or not we like it or not. And finally, Trumpy Toon and Levin said, looked at their watch, said, look, we're running out of time. One of you girls, get in there and say you didn't like it. So they sent one in who really liked it to say she didn't like it and then got along with the show in Seattle, Washington. And that's how it works. So now, this idea that people should be afraid for their lives when police pull them over for reckless driving and then beat them to death is a no-brainer. You know, you're part of a society that doesn't reckless drive. You know, you don't want to go blaming no cops for this. It's racist to blame the cops. And so what you want to do is tune into the white who's confused about this. He thinks he doesn't understand that it's racist to blame the reckless driver or something. You know, it goes on and on. It's a demonization of anything that moves. I mean, clearly it was an outrage that they pulled over a person who supposedly was reckless driving, gave him all sorts of commands and counter commands, and then murdered him. That's ridiculous. I mean, how can anybody justify that? Nobody did. Naturally, nobody did. But they raid the House of Representatives and Congress in broad daylight and have a discussion afterwards about whether it was justified or not justified. How could it be justified? How could it be justified to torture and basically incinerate a deaf person as a stereotype? Well, I'll explain how they justify that. When Will Zell had me on Mount Desert Island, remember, he's the pro Earth First, Joseph Goebbels admiring leader of the JDL who represents the NAACP and Holy Africa was warriors of the German swastika, which is an ancient ancestor symbol, they say. Okay, so we get that. Now that's the easy part. He says that Duderak, the cow dog, has to be taken out to non-cow hooves as therapy so he doesn't bite someone. And you're supposed to think, oh, I know what that means with your spinner on your head. That means Jimmy might be too upset and not healing correctly from the neuroplasm. No, don't say neuroplasm. And don't laugh. From Leslie's nightly cleanse. Okay, Leslie's nightly cleanse. So, but they had much more going on with this Calhoun therapy idea. What they did was they robbed everybody. They were robbing the museum. They were building nuclear weapons. They were planning to raid the Antarctica, and they have friends leapfrogging with Putin. You know, they have people working it all out to put up a smoke screen of conflict in the Ukraine while they've got domination over all of these quarters. And they called, because Trump is a white Führer of this movement, they needed a white stereotype who they could stand in as a coward. So they get offered up a white. And Yoko Ono said, I don't like him because he's associated with the Audubon. Louis Farrakhan said, I don't like him because we gave him a midnight snack and he didn't understand what he was doing because he is a deteriorating European. And Will Zell said, I don't like him because he's against the natural law of the earth. And the Jews said, we don't like him. We like Joseph Goebbels better than him because he said the truth about a girl who was saying things that could be misinterpreted to her and other women. And he was protesting her, and we don't like him for trying to wriggle out of our persona impinging on the persona's experience. So everybody didn't like me. There's probably some more people who don't like me for all these reasons. But the main thing is it's the stereotype of the white. It's a deaf white shot. Yeah, they don't care that it's deaf. They go to all that. No, he was resisting to break it. He was calling these people fixers. And he went and he dared to say he had evidence that it was a fixer behind the whole thing. He dared to. He's not Catholic. He looks at porno. He has a girlfriend who who mentally slowed down by Down syndrome. And even though he never manhandled her or did anything other. It was a friendship, but it was a very romantic friendship. As the FBI, we were even disappointed when I didn't use the word romantic. It was very romantic. It was a friendship. But he's a deteriorating European because he prefers the Asian. And they go crazy when somebody's with an Asian. They really tear the carpet. You see these losers from Pittsburgh ripping carpet with their jaws and fury when somebody like gets along with an Asian girl who's mentally retarded, has epilepsy, has Down syndrome and epilepsy, and taught him sign language, and they raped her for it and all this stuff because they needed cow hooves because they were ripping the carpet. Peter Gabriel fell on all fours, tore a abandoned carpet to smithereens, saying virginity proves right. And Patricia Phipps was bellowing, sophomores are sacred. They understand the infinite perceptiveness of her brother dropping his pick. Something goes wrong. That this is an innate, overwhelming, horrendous emanating from the deaf white sock. And this is how they operated. And they want to bring guns into the House of Representatives to shut down people who have any sense, common sense in the least whatsoever, on any level whatsoever. And they create this bizarre left wing, absolutely bizarre, deranged left wing. And then they erect this even more horrendously weird, super Nazi right wing, and they peck at each other, and they say that one's not normal. The other one says the other one's not normal. When neither one of them can make any sense of what they've done, not one little bit. None of it makes any sense. But Levin, oh, he gets his name on the medicine that it's going to lead James Curry into damnation. Oh, that he's a caution. He's a caution. That's sacred hymn to Brother Weasel. Don't say Brother Weasel. You know it because you don't say Brother Weasel. No,